Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever episode of the Analog Rugby Show. I'm joined by YouTuber Rugby Itch. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
It's been a very, very exciting week of rugby. We're going to start off with the one and only Wallabies v France. I assume you're doing well, just quickly.
Yeah, no, doing very well, I mean, Wallabies versus France should be a very good game to watch, of course, with the second test being on the cards for Wednesday, I believe. So it's going to be very interesting to watch. Of course, the Wallabies did win their first game, within the dying seconds of that game. So, congrats to the Wallabies, of course. But, the French definitely have to, learn a few lessons from that game as well. They did, you could say, bottle it, the Senegalese within the last 80. They just didn't kick it out. But at the same time, it's one of those which they just did very well to kind of retain the ball and obviously, win the game from there. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what happens within the second test for sure.
I think the Wallabies dominated in the breakdown and France gave away a lot of penalties. As you may have said, they dominated the scoreboard for the most of the games. It was Lolesio that kicked that winning penalty. And what are your thoughts on the Wallabies' performance on Wednesday night? What do you think they actually need to improve?
I think that they have to improve, probably within the breakdown for sure. I think it was one of those where I think both teams were pretty well within the breakdown, but at the same time they just need to do better. It's a simple statement, I know, but at the same time they just need to their loose forwards in particular. They weren't really that good within the breakdown. I noticed that it was mostly the props who were actually winning most of the balls from that set piece. So I think they just have to really improve on that. But at the same time, I think they have to kind of maintain the standards that they've done within that, maul of theirs within the line out. Because I do think it's very, it's a very good threat they have actually towards those line outs, actually, obviously as an attacking threat towards the French. So it's one of those I think the Wallabies should definitely look to improve on. But at the same time, I think they just kind of maintain the same game they had, really. I think when German obviously coming off the bench, I really think he injected a lot of pace within that game. And obviously brought, was my opinion, the main difference maker in why the Wallabies won. So just hopefully they start him instead of Jake Gordon, who actually started. So yeah, if they can put Tate McDermott ahead of him, then I'll be pretty happy.
Very interesting. We're going to get on to wrapping up England versus USA and kind of previewing England v Canada a little bit. England beat USA 43-29 in Twickenham. England did very well in clean breaks and tackling, which made them win the game. Where both teams were playing, what was expected by you? Did you think that the result was a surprise, and why?
I wouldn't say the result was a surprise because England do have a very good depth, you could say, within their younger core, and obviously this wasn't England's best side, of course, with a lot of their main players playing for the British and Irish Lions. But at the same time, a lot of players actually succeeded within that game, obviously against the United States. And I do believe Marcus Smith was probably the main man, I believe, within that game for sure. I mean, he was just great to watch, and obviously was a great player in his kind of link-up play towards the back line. So yeah, I think the English did very well in that game. And yeah, I think they really just dominated that game against the US. But at the same time, I think the US also did, pretty well to kind of, give them a challenge. So yeah, credit to them as well.
What do England need to do next game against Canada?
There's not a lot, to be frank, because obviously this is, they had a high scoring game obviously against the US. So if they can kind of, do the same thing towards Canada, then that's what I would like to see. But at the same time, if they can kind of improve within their breakdown, that'd be a lot. Yeah, they'd do a lot better in that game.
You look like you're an All Black supporter, judging by what you're wearing, but I know you've got a big collection of all that. Let's get on to the All Blacks v Tonga. And yes, I know you support South Africa. I was just pulling your leg there. What did the All Blacks do on the field that made them extra strong that day, and why? Were Tonga giving all their game, or did they give up?
I think the All Blacks are just, obviously they are in my book still the number one team in the world. It's one of those which I think at this moment of time they're probably the number one team in the world. But I mean, against a side like Tonga, who obviously are, I believe, a tier 3 nation, it's one of those which I just felt bad for them in that sense. Obviously, they didn't have all their players available towards them. So I do believe, they gave their hearts out within the game, and I do believe they tried obviously their hardest. But it's one of those which I think the All Blacks are just a more dominant side, and obviously have a lot more squad depth to, sub on players who are at the same level of quality. So it's just one of those which I just think the All Blacks did very well to actually, kind of beat Tonga in that kind of in that way, and obviously get 100 points, over 100 points. It's just you don't get that often, so you just got to kind of congratulate New Zealand on that.
So on to the British and Irish Lions, and they demolished the two South African domestic teams. They will be versing the Sharks again on Saturday night, South African time, at Loftus Versfeld. British and Irish Lions just playing against domestic sides. It just proves them winning by so much. It proves just the difference of player quality by levels, really.
Exactly. I think the British and Irish Lions, of course, they are made up of a team of, pretty much the best players from those four nations. So you kind of expect them to do pretty well. But at the same time, I never thought it would be that kind of scoreline in the sense how it's, that wide open of a gap. But I think it's just one of those which I think the Lions have done very well, particularly I'd say Josh Adams and maybe the likes of, there was three players. I'd say probably Josh Adams. I'd probably say Van der Merwe. I thought he did pretty well from the last game. And I'd probably say Ian Henderson. I was very impressed by him. But other than that, I think obviously there's a lot of players who've done pretty well in both games. So hopefully they can kind of continue that form, obviously going into the next game against the Sharks again, because obviously that cancelled game for the British and Irish Lions.
On to Ireland v Japan, and I thought that was a really good game from both sides. Maybe I'm wrong, but Ireland beat Japan 39-31. The game was very close throughout the first and second half. Yeah. Ireland had to work to push through Japan's strong defense when scoring tries. What are your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I thought it was a brilliant game of rugby. Really, I think that's what rugby is all about, really, where you kind of have an even level contest in the sense where Japan brought their A game, as well as Ireland. Ireland, of course, don't have their main players available to them, same as England. But it's one of those which I think it really was a good game to watch. I mean, it was one of those games which I think when Ireland scored a try, Japan would score a try 5 minutes later. It was just back and forth, really. So at the end of the day, I think Ireland did pretty well, obviously, to hold on to their victory. But at the same time, I just got to praise Japan for that game because they were just brilliant throughout the whole game.
That's all the match wraps we have, except for, of course, just the quick updates. So 2 international rugby matches have been cancelled. Tomorrow, Samoa will take on Tonga as New Zealand are versing Fiji. Argentina will be versing Wales. England will be versing Canada, and Ireland will be playing the USA as the Wallabies finish their series against France. Argentina beat Romania by 24-17. And Wales flogged Canada 68-12. Big week of rugby union. That's just a small part of what's happening this week. What's your message of it? Players and the spectators and fans and all that, and coaches maybe.
Yeah, I'd just say be excited. I mean, obviously, this is the second week really where you're going to get a lot of these teams playing against each other. So just very excited to see who actually wins and obviously who loses. But at the same time, I'm hoping for all these games to be kind of similar towards that Ireland-Japan game in the sense where, both teams are, obviously involved in getting some tries in the game, so that's kind of what I'm hoping for. But also just a quick thing, just want to say that I'm hoping that for the US and Canada as well, it's a great experience for them obviously to play against Northern Hemisphere nations, so it's just a great opportunity for them, and hopefully they learn some lessons from obviously these games.
You've always got the great thoughts on your channel Rugby Itch, so subscribe to that. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for joining. Like and subscribe to this video and this channel if you haven't already. Share your thoughts in the comments. Also, a quick shout out to Deco333 who shouted me out. So shout out to you. See you in the next video. Bye for now.